Drive over a kid's bike, pay the price. Okay, this story took place a very long time ago, in the summer of 1969. I was about 12. I had an early morning paper route in my neighborhood. One of the first things that I bought with my earnings was a brand new 10-speed bike. It was silver with red trim. I was really proud of it, and I took very good care of it. I also used it to deliver my newspapers in the morning. One of my customers was often leaving for work around the time that I got there. I always made a point of parking my bike well off to the side while I went up to deliver his paper. This particular morning, he turned too soon and too sharply while backing out of his driveway and backed right over my bikes, ruining the front sprocket and derailleur. He stuck his head out the window and asked, "Is it okay?" "Not exactly," I said. "Well, that's what you get for leaving it behind my car." Then he drove off. I walked it home, crushed and upset. I felt helpless against this adult who clearly had no intention of doing anything about it, and I didn't know what to do. My hurt, frustration, and powerlessness gradually turned to anger. I stopped delivering his paper, and when he complained, I told my supervisor that I was delivering, but he just liked to complain. So ultimately, it wasn't held against me, but the real revenge was yet to come. He lived on the main route through the neighborhood that all the kids took to go to the local 7-Eleven and other places. His mailbox sat on a steel fence post loosely set into the ground. That summer, I got in the habit of pulling it up and throwing it over the fence into the cemetery across the street, maybe once or twice a week. It was fun and mischievous, but it still didn't satisfy my need for revenge. He had 3 large frond shrubs in his front yard that would grow to 6 or 8 feet over the course of the summer and then begin to die back. They were several feet apart, with nothing else close by. One August evening, I threw a lit match into one on my way home from the 7-Eleven. I never heard anything else, but on my route the next morning, it was just a burned husk in his front yard. Over the next couple weeks, I did the same to the other 2. I was beginning to feel a bit satisfied, but one morning, on the way home from delivering papers, I had an inspiration. I saw that the side window of his garage was open. Now, I knew that what I was considering was taking it a bit far, but I was an impulsive kid, and I thought tit for tat was fair. Back in the day, everybody carried road flares, aka emergency flares, in their cars. So I climbed through the window, found 2 flares, lit them, and stuck one right under behind each of his rear tires, then climbed out and hightailed it home and went back to bed. I did not go back to see what happened, and I stayed away from the area for several days. I knew that I'd ruined his tires. I never saw the result, but I didn't care. And I never did another thing to him. Edit forced paragraph breaks, fixed minor typos.
Story 2.
Can't keep it in your pants? Have fun trying to live a normal life. A friend of mine told me my story belonged there, so here we go. TWSA, rape, grooming. In my country, high school starts at the age of 15 and lasts 3 years. I was a year early. So I was 14. During the first weeks of school, a guy in my class, for the sake of this story I'll call him Connor, approached me and we started getting along to the point we quickly started dating. Little did I know Connor would become my worst nightmare for the next 3 years. He was 17 when we met, and just like a lot of guys this age, he was obsessed with doing it. He pressured me into having my first time with him, and he broke up with me right after I eventually gave in. After that, none of our next intercourses were consented. He was very manipulative and gaslit me into believing I wanted everything that was happening to me. It took me a while to understand what he was actually doing. In fact, I only got it after hooking up with another person at the age of 17. Before it finally hit me, he had his way with me more than 50 times. During our second year of high school, he made the mistake of forcing himself violently on my best friend. She ended up getting an abortion because of him, and I started plotting my revenge. Originally it was supposed to avenge her, but it ended up working for me as well. I noticed that not only he would only approach the first years even if he was 20 when I graduated, but he would also target the youngest girls among them too. He was repeating me how much more attractive I was at 14 than 17. So, knowing that it was pointless to tell the police because in my country only 0.4 of all complaints of rape where victims are less than 15 end up in a sentence, I ruined his reputation. I told every single one of his acquaintances that he was a rapist, and to protect my best friend I told everyone I was the one he had violated, which wasn't really a lie. The rumor spread like wildfire, and after a few days even the teachers were looking at him with disgust. He was isolated, and the only reason why he wasn't bullied was because he is 6 feet 3 inches 190 cm tall. I could have stopped there, but I didn't. When we were third years, I knew exactly which universities he applied for. By snooping in Connor's bag I found his application numbers, so using those I contacted every single university he applied for and explained the situation, providing screenshots of his conversation with my best friend where he was threatening her with a defamation case if she attempted to press charges against him. She had sent them to me to rant about him, and I had kept them all this time. All of them thanked me, and he ended up not being able to get in any university. He had to repeat his third year because of that. in an establishment where everyone knew what he had done and all the first years would know that they had to avoid him at all costs. The next year, since I wasn't there to foil his applications, Connor was accepted in a university that I hadn't contacted the previous year. Unfortunately for him, I ended up learning which university he was going in and repeated the same process. There were former students of our high school in the university he was going to, who spoke up to the uni's mental health center about the inappropriate behavior he had with them and told them what kind of rumors there were against him. Since I had provided proof that the rumors were true, Connor was permanently expelled for the safety of the female students attending the university. So now he doesn't have a degree and nowhere else to go study, with no social life. His situation couldn't get worse, could it? Well, yes. I made it worse. Connor tried to move to another region where no one would know him, and pass a diploma to work with kids. However, Connor is a phone addict, and couldn't help but share on his social medias that he had passed his diploma and started working as an educator for troubled kids and preteens. Little did he know, I had created an account pretending to be one of his only remaining high school acquaintances who I knew was chronically offline. With a bit of searching I ended up finding his workplace, and started the same process all over again. I also added a message he had left on my voicemail where he was panting while telling me how hot I was at the age of 14 and how he would have loved to go back in time just to fuck me again. Needless to say, they got rid of him really quick, fearing for the safety of the kids. I was planning on reporting him to all the places he was planning to work to, but his previous workplace took care of that for me. I don't know how, but according to Connor's social media they managed to get him blacklisted on a national level, technically invalidating his diploma. Due to this he couldn't pay his rent anymore and ended up being homeless for a while before his mother accepted to take him back in. I'm friends with his older sister who knows everything about it, and told the rest of the family what happened. From what she's told me, everyone cut off ties with both Connor and his mother, including her. I'm still occasionally stalking his social media to see if he's trying to get back on his feet. The last time I checked was today, right before writing all of this. So raping two people ended up isolating him both socially and from his family. As long as I'm alive he has no chance of ever getting a girlfriend. He lives in the region where he spent his high school years, so no one would hire him even as a cleaner, and he even spent some nights in the street. Honestly, at this point it's impressive that no one tried to harm him physically, make him go through what he made me and my best friend go through, or even end his life. Go to hell, Connor. And trust me when I tell you that you'll have to wait for me to die before even thinking about starting to have a normal life.
Story 3.
Abuse me as a child? Teenage me might ruin your life. I've wanted to tell this story for so long and I figured this was the perfect place. Apologize if the spelling grammar aren't amazing. I've written this out in one sitting and don't have the energy to edit. When I was about 10 years old my dad got a new girlfriend, Lauren. Lauren was an evil monster. When I first met her she was lovely and friendly. I quickly liked her, but over the years everything went downhill fast. It started small. Lauren would steal my things then deny it. Of course everyone believed her. She'd tell me that my dad loved her more than me and that if she wanted to she could click her fingers and he'd never see me again. She read my diary then told everyone what I'd written. She reported me to the RSHP for abusing my animals. I wasn't. After a couple of years she had my dad beating me. Yes, I know he was an adult with choices and I hold him just as responsible. She would constantly tell my dad how bad I was and encourage him to hurt me. After a while he'd always snap and end up doing what she wanted. There are so many more things she did, but you get the picture. My dad Lauren separated when I was about 16 years old, but they had a house together still. It was around this time as a suicidal, miserable teenager that I decided I'd get even. I spent months on my plan, and this is what I did. I wanted Lauren's entire life to fall apart all at once, so everything had to be perfectly timed. I started by getting her fired and a minor criminal record. Lauren worked at a police warehouse for seized items, but naughty Lauren was stealing from the warehouse, so I made notes on what she stole and when. Once I had a decent enough list I anonymously contacted her boss with my list. Lauren was immediately suspended. After a few weeks she was found to be guilty of stealing. She was immediately fired and charged with theft, including theft of a Class C substance. Now Lauren was unemployed and pretty much unemployable. On to stage 2. Lauren, with no income, needed to sell the house as she was now unable to pay her mortgage. My dad also wanted to sell so he could move in with his new girlfriend. So I made the house unsellable and pretty unpleasant to live in. My dad Lauren were stupid and never locked their back door. I didn't have keys, so I'd sneak in when I knew they were out and hide disgusting things, bugs everywhere, old prawns hidden under floorboards. I even stitched some old prawns into the bottom of the curtains. Dead mice everywhere, including under Lauren's pillow. Live mice in the pantry. The house stank and no one could figure out why. Estate agents refused to list it or would only list it for far under the value, and potential buyers would leave quickly after no one could explain the source of the vile smell. Lauren was approaching bankruptcy, Exactly what I wanted. Only one area of her life left to destroy. Lauren had been in a relationship for a year or so with this guy. I can't even remember the poor guy's name. We'll call him John. Well, Lauren was cheating on John, and with his own father of all people. Poor John proposed to Lauren. He needed to know who she really was. One day when Lauren had John's dad over, I got in the house via the unlocked back door. I grabbed her mobile, which she'd left in the kitchen. It took a few attempts and a lot of house watching to get lucky with the phone. I texted John from her phone pretending to be Lauren. I told him I was sick and asked him to come over. Of course, good old John rushed over. I unlocked the front door and texted him letting him know to let himself in as I was in bed sick. I left and hid around the area. The drama was intense. Lauren, John's dad, half naked, chasing after John in the street, screaming, crying. I think John might have even punched his dad before driving off. Obviously the relationship was over, and John's dad even ditched her in an attempt to get his son's forgiveness. So Lauren was alone, broke, unemployable, facing charges and about to be bankrupt. Sadly, I don't know how this story ends. I cut contact with my dad around that time, and thus my connection to Lauren was gone. I do remember my dad mentioning her being suicidal right before we stopped speaking, so in my eyes my goal was achieved. I didn't need to see the fallout anyway. Just knowing what I'd achieved was more than enough for me. And that's the story of how I got revenge. Writing it out, I realize how unreal it sounds, but that's the whole story.
Story 4.
Try getting me fired. Enjoy homelessness. I was an adjunct professor at a college. One of the students didn't like me and tried to get me fired by making false accusations that I had pinched her and caressed her hair. I did not take this lightly. I could have been fired or faced criminal charges. This student was on a scholarship that required her to maintain a minimum attendance. Our college also requires a minimum attendance to pass a unit. An eye for an eye, right? I accidentally forgot to mark her name down when taking attendance, even if she was there. A few weeks later she was gone. I was confronted by her friend that she lost her scholarship and was now living out of her car because of my carelessness in taking attendance. Little did they know. Edit. My entire livelihood could have been ruined. How was I meant to know she wouldn't do it again? I cannot kick someone out from a he said she said situation. Some of the students were already treating me with hostility.
Story 5.
I'm trained to be an asshole. You are not. Removed from Pro Revenge. Told to post here. This concluded about 3 months ago. First off, let me say I have PTSD from 2 tours. This isn't a brag or flex, but any vet with PTSD will vouch that it is very hard to let assholes walk away. Because of this stupid shit, I can only really work jobs alone now. I've been working a while at cleaning stores after hours. Not surface cleaning, but checking areas that mice have been, etc. Dirty job, but the pay more than makes up for it. One day I'm having some considerable back pain, so my wife, Mill and Sil, cover for me. I get a call a couple hours later from my wife complaining about the manager. Now, I've worked retail before, and I know it sucks, so I tend to give some leeway when non-retail folks say someone's being mean versus not in the mood for BS. I hear he yelled at them when they walked in that the store was closed. Okay buddy, they used a key, chill. Then he got upset that he didn't know there was a cleaning that day. BS. I wrote and distributed the schedule 3 weeks prior. Then tried to tell them where to clean. I have a contract, and your employees' duties aren't included in it. I rolled my eyes at the complaint. I admit it. Managers suck, and I didn't think this was a big deal. Just some incompetent GM. Then I get a call a half hour later. GM was making some gender-based jokes to his all-male staff. Hey, you put it on your makeup, you need a tampon, etc. while they were shutting down. Okay, that's pretty tasteless, but for me it's hearsay. Then I'm told that on his way out of the parking lot, they saw the GM try to open my car's door. Insert PTSD here. I call the store the next day, ask to talk to the manager on duty. I have a pretty civil convo, highlighting my concerns about the manager paying attention to his schedule and contracts. I mentioned there was some witnessed unprofessionalism, but that's not for me to correct. Mind you, the convo is going very professionally up to this point. When I mention the car, guy's whole attitude changes. He gets very vocal and very defensive, cutting me off and raising his voice. Before I realize, we are yelling at each other. I hang up and talk to my wife. I describe the guy based off of his voice and accent, and my wife is certain that I'm speaking to the GM. I'll call him E. I call back and simply say I want to know what authority you had to try to get in my car. He starts to play dumb until I name the security company that patrols and monitors his lot, shared lot with other businesses, and I can request footage through the police. He says he doesn't have to explain himself to me, and he hangs up. Oh fuck no. I call back a final time. I say if we can't work this out, I have to get your boss involved. Fine, go ahead and call me when you do. He hangs up. Insert revenge. I won't go into how, but I will explain what happened over the next few weeks. Remember, I have a key to this store and am still able to show up on contracted days. His handwritten statement about the argument goes missing. Not a huge loss, The thing was 90 lies to get ahead of what he did. Find multiple disciplinary notes that all show that Mr. E, as all of his employees seem to call him, loved to write up all his employees for frivolous shit. This is a common tactic by weak managers as insurance for when employees complain about them. These also go missing. A file is found with many complaints about the store and interactions between E and customers. Copies are made. E's business starts to get multiple one-star Google reviews from various accounts. Some of the reviewers post pictures of his store's mouse infestation and product damaged by little teeth that he leaves on the shelf. Let me tell you, seeing mouse shit next to food does wonders for your Google page. 2 anonymous complaints to the city about the mouse infestation within the store, with pictures, none of which match the ones I send to my bosses. 1 complaint to the city from an employee that cites a ton of safety violations within the store, then mentions how bad the mouse infestation has gotten and that the city should inspect and make sure they ask for proof of an exterminator. There is none. Poor gal was begging. Her name even matched an employee's name. Fancy that. Random occult symbols begin to appear in his work journal, hidden among things he has already written. To clarify, this is because I could recall the symbols. It point wasn't for the occult, it was so things would show up in his personal journal that he didn't write. His boss's boss contact info hanging in office received an email detailing his unprofessionalism, gender-based harassment, and attempt to get into a vehicle that wasn't his. I also mentioned how many violations I saw as I was cleaning broken equipment, safety hazards, lack of proper cleaning supplies, chemicals over pet food, etc. I even tried to compromise and said if they can provide a policy that says he could check my vehicle without security or law enforcement, then I'd retract my complaint. Otherwise, every scheduled cleaning that he is still there for, I'd cancel and send him a fee. Suddenly, there is a shift in the store. I still go much later to avoid people, but it is much cleaner. There are even enough cleaning supplies for the store to function. There are less passive-aggressive notes everywhere. Curious about it, I go in the office and see there is definitely a change. The complaint file is shrunk down and the office is cleaner. Whoever's boss now sure seems like a nice lady. E receives a text from a number he won't be able to call back. Have you learned your lesson yet? His full name? Or do I need to take your next job from you too? The end. Edit. This wasn't just some random guy that happened to piss me off. I read the other Google reviews and the office complaints. He was by far the biggest ass I've ever seen in management, and further digging made it clear that he, a second manager also responsible for a filthy store I clean, and their direct manager were buddies. Simply complaining would have resulted in nothing, clearly. Hence me going even higher. The other stores I clean, about a dozen other locations, are nowhere nearly as bad. Every shred of evidence uncovered showed that this dude just loved to abuse the shit out of his position. I have no regrets, no same. Edit 2. Since some people have very low reading comprehension, let me spell this out. You cannot act on words. Watch any body cam video. The cop explains to whoever assaults that words may hurt but you can't act on them. Once I had something concrete, footage of vehicle access. I had my golden ticket. Any of you mad I didn't jump to my wife's defense over words are just as jovial as the manager. And when my wife told me, she wasn't crying or scared or anything. She was pissed and annoyed too. She knew I couldn't do anything about the comments. Why can't some of you? Edit 3. Having a PTSD episode does not mean I am suddenly back in the shit. This is a common misconception. Not all PTSD manifests the same. What it means for me is I enter a mindset where the opponent is an enemy, not a GM or a shitty driver or rude passerby, and I have to efficiently and effectively destroy them in a way that keeps my hands clean. Final fucking edit. This wasn't about the car. This was about what one man was comfortable doing to a stranger because he thought he could get away with it. The car was just evidence I could actually work with. For those pissed I didn't white knight my wife, she cared less about the words than some of you all did because she isn't a fucking child.